Kinnock.
Thank you very much indeed, Sir George, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. And I'd like to thank and pay tribute to my honourable friend, the member for Sheffield Central, for securing this important debate. He delivered an incredibly powerful speech, which included a number of examples of people who've had their lives really turned upside down by this policy shift. I know that this is an issue by which many individuals and families across the country have been profoundly impacted, and that there has been real concern over the government's policy changes and handling of these changes. And I'll come to those points very shortly. But before doing so, I did also just want to thank my honourable friends, the members for Wirral West, East Ham and Sheffield Hallam, for their really important contributions to this debate. So, George, this policy change to raise the minimum income threshold in order to secure a visa for a spouse from £18,600 to £29,000 and then later £38,700 is the direct result of the Conservative government wanting to bring down immigration, having allowed net migration to spiral to record levels of 745,000 in 2022. This despite their repeated promise to the electorate that they would be bringing numbers down to the tens of thousands. In 2019, the incoming Conservative government promised to reduce the level of net migration, which at that time was 245,000, but since then that figure has trebled. We on these benches are aware of this trend, and we have set out plans to reduce our economy's reliance on migrant workers by reforming the skills system, getting people off long-term sick leave back into work, and by ending the 20% discount for businesses recruiting from abroad in shortage sectors, and expecting businesses to draw up workforce plans to ensure that they are able to recruit more local resident talent. But turning now to the specifics of this debate, the historic stated aim of the spousal visa threshold has been to make sure that couples and families have the income which enables them to be self-reliant so that they don't need to rely on our social security system. That is why the income threshold was set at around £18,600 previously, with additional requirements per dependent. Now, we agree with that basic aim, which is why the level set must reflect the genuine level needed and required to support family in the UK, and it mustn't just be a number that is plucked out of thin air arbitrarily. That is why we have consistently raised concerns over the lacking evidence base behind the initial rise to £29,000, because the government has extraordinarily failed to provide any impact assessment on the number of people who will be affected by this shift, or the numbers of people who will be prevented from coming to Britain to join their loved ones. So whilst we support attempts to deliver more sustainable levels of net migration to get the balance right in our economy and our society, then the government must be honest and clear in providing a full impact assessment in order that any member in this chamber and beyond is able to fully understand the impact of the changes that they are proposing on their constituents and to make informed choices and based on an informed analysis. We on these benches are strong believers in evidence-based policy making, in stark contrast, I have to say, to this government, which appears to be addicted to headline chasing, performative posturing, and making policy on the hoof. We do find it deeply disappointing that ministers have chosen to shoot from the hip on a number of policies across the spectrum of government, but to have done so on the matter that we are debating today is particularly reprehensible, given how directly it impacts on the deeply personal life choices that people have made and are making. Indeed, by appearing to pull these 29,000 and 39,000 thresholds out of thin air, ministers have quite frankly behaved in a glib and flippant manner that is both contemptuous of Parliament and shockingly disrespectful towards the couples and families whose lives have been turned upside down by these changes. The failure or refusal of ministers to publish the impact assessments is particularly baffling since we know that both financial and equalities impact assessments have been completed, as my honourable friend, the member for Sheffield Central, pointed out in his speech. A report by the Secondary Legislation Scrutiny Committee makes clear its utter exasperation with repeated failures by the Home Office to publish the information that members of both houses would need to properly scrutinise the proposed changes and consider their potential implications. And I quote in their words, "A failure to provide impact information and on a timely basis makes it impossible for Parliament to scrutinise the legislation properly. Moreover, impact information should be a useful tool in the policy-making process, helping departments to refine and improve their proposals. It appears to us that, instead, the Home Office too often tacks on impact analysis as an afterthought." And for good measure, I will give way.
I apologise for intervening again, but I'm very conscious sitting here that in Northern Ireland the average wage, I understand, is £28,939. Many people are on a less wage and not there. Does the Shadow Minister believe that the Minister, in his response to all of the questions that are being asked, should ask, in my case, the Northern Ireland Assembly for their opinion in relation to this, will give them the facts and a realism in this, the facts and figures, and the same thing should apply as well to the Scottish Parliament and indeed to the Welsh Assembly, because if we collate all those three regions, then they'll come up with different figures.
I thank the honourable member for that excellent intervention, and he's absolutely right, because I think the point he is making is that we need to get an aggregate picture of the overall impact of this policy across the United Kingdom. But of course that aggregate picture needs to be built up through the building blocks of key stakeholders and inputs, including, of course, the part of the United Kingdom from which he comes, as indeed colleagues from Scotland and Wales, I'm sure, would concur. So he's absolutely right in that point. And for good measure, the committee's report added that we have criticised the Home Office's explanatory material with such frequency that we are concerned there may be a systemic or cultural issue that is preventing the Home Office from getting it right. So could the Minister therefore please explain to us today in his remarks, what is the stated aim of this, what is the actual aim, of this policy change? Is it to make sure migrants are self-reliant and do not need to rely on our social security system, or has that aim changed? How was the 29,000 figure decided? Could we please see some workings around that? Why is the government introducing a huge jump to almost 39,000? Again, why that particular number? And will he promise to fully consult on the impact of the 29,000 change before moving any further, and then the need for any subsequent rise? Why has he not provided an impact assessment for this policy, both for the 29,000 and for the 39,000? Also, why has the Minister not asked the Migration Advisory Committee to undertake a review into this policy change, or even to have asked their view on it? The first thing Labour would do, if we're privileged to form the next government, would be to ask the MAC to review this policy and to make recommendations about the level at which the threshold for spousal visas should be set in future. The MAC review that we would commission would consider a range of factors: the historic aim of ensuring migrants are able to be self-sufficient and how the benefit system connects with that aim. My honourable member the member for Sheffield Central has suggested exploring the way in which the threshold might interact with the minimum wage, the number of people affected and how they will be impacted, and the overall impact on net migration. Now, the MAC haven't actually commissioned a report specifically on the family visa issue since 2011-2012, but they did say in their 2020 annual report that given the amount of time that's passed since the 2012 changes came into effect, a fresh review could be worthwhile. They said, "We think now would be an opportune time to reconsider the minimum income requirements associated with this route. The MAC are concerned that previous analysis may have given too much weight to the fiscal contribution of such migrants and insufficient attention to the benefits that accrue to both the family and society from the route. In addition, it is a considerable time since the current income requirements were introduced, so more evidence should now be available to review the impact of these requirements. So could the Minister please explain why the Government has failed to act on the Max 2020 suggestion, and can he now commit to requesting that review now? Sir George, hard-working, good people, their partners and their families are at the very heart of this policy. So why did it take so long for the Government to confirm that those people who are already here and reapplying will be exempt from the rise? This caused a huge amount of undue hurt and anxiety, and I'm afraid it confirmed the view held by many that the Government is motivated by performative cruelty. And on a related point, can the Government also make clear to all those who started a new application before the changes came in that it will be processed under the old thresholds? And a final question for the Minister. At the very least, will he today commit to making a statement to the House, setting out the results of the impact assessment, rather than bulldozing through secondary legislation which can have a far-reaching and profoundly damaging impact on the lives of couples and families all over Britain? Thank you.